Hello everyone, I'm Swati Sharma from Department of Management Studies. Today we discuss about new economic policy. So, new economic policy of India was launched in the year 1991 under the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao. In this new economic policy, P.V. Narasimha Rao government reduced the import duties, opened reserved the sector for the private players, devalued the Indian currency to increase the export. This is also known as the LPG model, like liberalization, privatization, and the globalization model. Dr. Manmohan Singh is considered to be the father of new economic policy of India, and he introduced new economic policy on July 24, 1991. Basically, it refers to the economic liberalization or relaxation in the import tariffs, deregulation of markets or opening the markets for private and foreign players, and reduction of taxes to expand the economic wings of the country. Next, there are some objectives of new economic policy. Like first, the main objective was to plunge Indian economy is into the arena of globalization and to give it a new thrust on market orientation. The new economic policy intended to bring down the rate of inflation. Next, it intended to move forwards the higher economic growth rate and to build sufficient foreign exchange reserves. It wanted to achieve economic stabilization and to convert the economy into a market economy by removing all kinds of unnecessary restrictions. It wanted to permit the international flow of goods, services, capital, human resource, and technology without many restrictions. It wanted to increase the participation of private players in the all sectors of the economy. That is why the reserve number of sectors for government were reduced. Um, today's, if we talk about today's policy, so new economic policy basically deals with three major points, that is liberalization, privatization, and the globalization. So first is liberalization. So what is liberalization? It is a lessening of government regulation and restrictions in an economy in exchange for greater participation by private entities. Earlier, private sector had to obtain license from the government for starting any new venture. In this policy, private sector has been free from licensing and other restrictions. There are now only these industries has to take license from the government. Rest all the industries are free to do their business and they don't have to looking forward for license. So six major industries in which license is needed is liquor, cigarettes, defense, industrial explosive, drugs, and hazardous chemicals. So steps taken under liberalization. First is free determination of interest rate by the commercial banks. So under this policy of liberalization, interest rates of the banking system will not be determined by RBI. Rather, all commercial banks are independent to determine the rate of interest. Second is increase in the investment limit for the small scale industries. Investment limit of the small scale industries has been raised to rupees 1 crore. So these companies can upgrade their machinery and improve their efficiency. Next is freedom to import capital goods. Indian industry will be free to buy machines and raw material from foreign countries to do their holistic development. Then freedom for expansion and production to industries. In this new liberalized era, now the industries are free to diversify their production capacity and reduces the cost of production. Earlier, government used to fix a maximum limit of production capacity. No industry could produce beyond that limit. Now the industries are free to decide their production by their own on the basis of their requirements of the market. Then abolition of restrictive trade practice. Like according to MRTP Act, all those companies having assets worth rupees 100 crore or more were called MRTP firms and were subjected to several restrictions. Now, these firms have not to obtain prior approval for the government for taking any investment decision. Then next is privatization. So, what is privatization? It basically means permitting the private sector to set up industries which were previously reserved for the private sector. Under this policy, many PSUs were sold to private sector. The main reason for privatization wasn't currency of PSUs are running in losses due to political interferences. So simply speaking, it is just the permitting the private sector to set up the industries, right? So there are steps taken under privatization. First is sale of shares of PSUs, public sector units, basically. So Indian government started selling shares of PSUs to public and the financial institutions. Example, government sold shares of Maruti Udyog Limited. Now the private sector will acquire ownership of these PSUs. So the share of private sector has increased from 45% to 50%. So next point is disinvestment in PSUs. The government has started the process of disinvestment in those PSUs which had been running into losses. So it means that government has been selling out these industries to private sector. Government has sold enterprises to so many crores to the private sector. Next point is minimization of public sector. Previously, public sector was given the importance with a view to help in industrialization and removal of poverty. But these PSUs could not able to achieve this objective and policy of contraction of PSUs. Now, few industries for private sector was reduces from 17 to now only two, atomic and railway. But now railway is also going to be privatized, few of its part. So this is all about privatization. Then globalization. It means to make global or worldwide. So otherwise taking into consideration the whole world. So broadly speaking, globalization means the interaction of the domestic economy with the rest of the world with regard to foreign investment, trade, production, and financial matters. So steps taken under globalization. First is reduction in tariffs, like custom duties, tariffs imposed on imports and exports are reduced gradually just to make Indian economy attractive to the global investors. Then long-term trade policy. So foreign trade policy was enforced for the longer duration, like liberal policy or the controls have been removed, like open competition is there. So this is all about the long-term trade policy. Then partial convertibility of Indian currency. Like partial convertibility can be defined as the convert of Indian currency in the currency of other countries, so that the flow of foreign investment in terms of FIIs and FDIs will improve. Then increase in equity limit of foreign investments. So, like equity limit of foreign capital investment has been raised from 40% to 100%, right? 1047, high priority industry, foreign direct investment to extent of 100% will be allowed without any restriction. So there are some weaknesses of new economic policies. So first weakness is absence of a suitable policy for exports. So next is distortions in industrial pattern owing to selective inflow of investment. So what is absence of suitable policy for exports? Like today, the high-tech industries are receiving a similar emphasis as was granted to their basic industry counterparts in the past based on the infant industry argument. So, in the environment of limited export incentives and regulated labor markets, there seems little reason to believe that today's infants will provide an engine for growth matters. Then, then is second is distortion in industrial pattern owing to selective inflow of investments. So, in the current phase of investment following liberalization, while substantial investments have been flowing into few industries, there is concern over the slow pace of investment in many basic and strategic industries such as engineering, power, machine tools, etc. So, this is mainly due to the low rate of return in these sectors. The need for strengthening interlinkages between new and old sectors. New sectors should have strong linkages with the old ones and should push up the later towards modernization and new product development. So, unless such interlinkages are strengthened, a part of the impetus given by the new sectors could be lost through leakage. Then, labor questions. Restructuring and modernization of industry as a sequel to the new industrial policy, it always leads to like displacement of labor. So this would call for redeployment of labor through re-abolition scheme. Then absence of incentives for raising efficiency. So, few studies have shown that the incentive structure in the 1980s was somewhat pervasive, leading to industrial growth, moving away from the sectors in which the country had comparative advantage and strength. So, such policies should encourage with high domestic resource cost. Then improperly absence of incentives for technological innovations, and the policy of liberalization appears to have failed to achieve one of its major objectives, like creating more innovative firms. Last but not the least, improperly defined industrial location policy. The new industrial policy, while emphasized the detrimental effect of damage to environment, failed to define a proper industrial location policies, so which would ensure a pollution-free development of industrial climate. So in its absence, the new industries have gravitated towards the already well-established industries with a well-developed structure. So to sum up or to end, there is a need for reviewing certain provisions of the policy to make it more meaningful and effective. So this is all about weaknesses of new economic policies. So thank you, everyone.